with their record sitting the way it is, I don't know if you could call this a must win, but if they do lose this game, I think it's going to be incredibly hard for them to look at the playoff picture realistically without a lot of help. So what are you coming up against the Ravens? Just give me like an overall thought first.
So yeah, we've been on our bye week. The last game that we had, which was on my honeymoon actually, was the Steelers game. And I watched a little bit of that live, and then I watched the full 22. By the way, guys, shout out to Coach Plays. Coach Plays has a phenomenal video about Justin Fields, and you guys should check that out. But anyway, to answer your question, I would say that the Bears, this was a turning point game. It was a turning point loss, and I'm glad they had the bye week to kind of let it sink in. And I'm glad they had the bye week to realize to kind of go over the film a lot, because it was a great loss. It was the greatest loss the Bears have had in, dare I say, a decade. It was the best loss we've had in a decade. And the reason why, let me explain that. The Steelers are a very, very, very good team, defensively especially. So, and Mike Tomlin specifically is one of the greatest defensive coaches in the entire league. He is a phenomenal defensive coach, and he knows how to put pressure on a young quarterback and how to confuse a young quarterback. And early on in the game, Justin Fields was confused. I do want to talk about the Ravens game, but I do want to break this one down first, and then I'll get to the Ravens game. I have a lot to unpack here because it's been a while.
We got nothing but time, so go for it, bud.
Heck yeah, okay, I will do this because this is important. This is very important. So this game was a huge game. It really was, the Steelers game. It was incredibly huge. There were moments in the game where the pass rush of the Steelers got just so darn, like, they were all up in his grill. The Fitzpatrick played amazing. The secondary of the Steelers they were all over the receivers. It was truly a great game for both teams. The Bears, they showed a lot of heart in this game. They really did. They showed a ton of heart. I watched it. And specifically, Justin Fields showed a ton of heart. He was taking hits. He was getting frustrated. He was getting pushed around, but he responded. In the third quarter, I think it was like 2 minutes to go in the third quarter, you could just see we were down, what was it? It was like 20 something to like 6. It was like 2 field goals the Bears had or something like that. It was a low score. The Bears were down at least 3 scores at this point. Justin Fields look on his face, was not panicked. It was not frustrated. It was not flustered with his teammates. It was locked in. It reminded me of Tom Brady, dude. He was locked in. He was like, all right, let's go. And after that, he played better. His throws came out faster. He went through his progressions. Like, that was, and that's the funny thing. We've talked about on the podcast so much, Justin Fields' strengths and weaknesses, and how can he get better, and how can he get better? The main problem we talked about this multiple times. The main problem that Justin Fields had was he went through his progression slowly. He'd get out, he'd snap the ball, he'd take his 3-step drop, he'd take way too long to go through his progressions, about 4 or 5 seconds, and then bam, he had a crappy offensive line, so he doesn't have time. But he literally snapped the ball, 1, 2, 3, go, find his guy. Man, he was phenomenal in that fourth quarter, and then he has a bye week to dissect that. He talked to the media multiple times during this week. I watched like 4 of them. I don't know if that's all of them, but I watched a lot of them. He seems not only confident now after that game, he is hungry as he is starving. This kid is starving, Bears fans. He is starving. This Justin Fields kid, he's a young Bear. He is absolutely wanting to rip apart everyone in this league, and we have the Lions coming up in a few weeks. This week, though, and that's what I'll talk about because that's what you asked about, so I'll break that down. I had to break down that Steelers situation because that was such a good game. The Steelers, hats off to them. Tipping my cap. They played amazing football from start to finish. Big Ben even had a couple of signature throws. Justin Fields said something at the end of the game. He said Big Ben gets a lot of hits, and they they throw the flag on him and stuff like that. I agree with that, and it's frustrating to see when Fields leaves the pocket even for half a second and they just pop him and he gets especially in the head. They hit him in the head quite a bit, and he never gets those calls. And I don't know if it's because he's fast or what it is, but I don't like it and it makes me angry. If you're going to call that for one quarterback, you have to call it for all the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
So,
it's got well, that's another thing. We could make an entire we could take like a good half-hour section of one of our episodes. The like the refs and the calls for the NFL this year have been terrible. It doesn't matter the game. We could do a whole just a segment on just that alone. But it's no, I 1000% agree. It's if you're going to give it to one quarterback, you got to call it consistently across the field.
If it doesn't, that's the thing. Like, what's a runner and what's not? Is it when you leave the pocket? Is it when you leave the scrimmage line? What's a runner? You know what I mean? Because I'm still looking for my throw, and you blast me in the head. I'm not a runner. So there's so many distinctions that the refs need to figure out. And I think this year specifically, because I think we had like a 3-year span. And I don't want to speak too optimistically. I don't want to speak for everyone. I think we had a 3-year span there where they figured out the catch rule and the refs were not that bad. And then all of a sudden this year, these old owners are just like, all right, well, you know what? I'm sick of taunting. So now everything is taunting, and that just throws everything off, and the rhythm of the game is ruined, and the calls are all over the place. It's a disaster. It really is. They need to figure this shit out fast. But yeah, no, I agree with you. If you're gonna call it for one guy, you have to, man. It's just the way of the game. Like, who's a runner? What's a runner? You can't say, oh, well, this quarterback runs a lot, therefore he can get blasted in the head. But this guy who kind of runs sometimes, he doesn't get, that's a flag because he's a quarterback. That's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. Sorry, I'll answer your question. The Ravens game. This is a must-win. I don't want to get too far off track.
That's kind of how me and you had talked off camera. That's kind of how I was looking at it. If they lose this game, the Bears, they're going to be their hopes for the playoffs they're going to need a lot of help in order to get there.
And I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. And I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this because this has been kind of the season that I almost hoped for. And I know that sounds weird, but like, I just wanted Fields to progress. I didn't care how it happened. I didn't care if it was on the bench. I didn't care if it was on the field. I just wanted Justin Fields to get out there and start, or at least show that he's progressing. And that last game definitely did. He'll probably take a step back at some point and take another, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, one of those things. That's how it is, man. That's how it is. But going to the Ravens game. The Ravens are coming off a tough loss, if I remember right. I think that was last week. My weeks are all messed up because I've been on vacation, but I'm pretty sure they came off a very tough loss last week, or it was the week before. They've had a tough season. Lots of injuries for the Ravens, man. And it's really tough. It's really tough when you have all those injuries from the offensive line to the running backs, and you have Lamar Jackson kind of relying on just a few guys. So it's really, really tough. I think that the Ravens are I don't know who's going to win that game, man. I'll say it. Justin Fields is the X factor. If Justin Fields plays well, we have as good a chance as anyone to win that game. But if he kind of has a tough game because it's a tough defense, it'll be understandable. This season is not about winning a Super Bowl. This season is about developing a franchise quarterback. That's what the Bears should be focused on. Next season, the season after that, then you can focus on a Super Bowl, getting your finances together. But what do you think about this game, my man? I've been talking like nonstop for 10 minutes, and it's been exploding, man. It's been like a week. You kind of, me and you are kind of on the same page. This season's about getting Justin Fields comfortable in the style of offense that you guys want him to run, and just making sure that he doesn't die. And he makes it through the season without a season-ending injury or something serious. Getting